In August 1976, the world teetered on the edge of nuclear war over a single poplar tree. Not a secret missile base, not a downed plane, just an ordinary tree rooted in a forbidden zone. The place was the Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, splitting North and South Korea. It's a strip of land over 150 miles long, bristling with fences, landmines, and armed soldiers facing off at all hours. And in this tense no-man's land rose a leafy poplar growing exactly where nobody could agree. Officially, the area was called the Joint Security Area, where both sides claimed the right to patrol. The tree had been there for decades, its branches gently swaying across the view. But to UN forces stationed at a checkpoint nearby, those branches were a problem. The foliage blocked their line of sight from checkpoint 3 to a neighboring post. In a zone where each meter of vision could mean life or death, surveillance wasn't optional. To most, it was just a tree. To soldiers, it was a blind spot, an invitation for ambush. So on August 18, 1976, a work party stepped out to trim it back. It was a routine job: 2 American officers, several South Korean soldiers, and a few workers with saws. The air that morning was heavy with summer heat and surveillance. Within minutes, North Korean soldiers on patrol appeared, watchful, tense, and not smiling. They shouted for the tree trimmers to stomp. Major Arthur Boniface, the American officer in charge, refused. The work was authorized, he explained. Tensions rose with every clipped branch. Suddenly, a crowd of North Korean soldiers surged forward, brandishing clubs and axes seized from the work crew. What happened next was brutal. The North Korean group attacked the Americans and South Koreans without warning. Major Boniface and First Lieutenant Mark Barrett were killed within seconds, beaten and hacked in front of stunned witnesses. The air filled with frantic shouts, panicked radio calls, and glimpses of blood on the dirt. Some South Korean soldiers barely escaped. Others hid behind the trunk of the very tree that started the fight. When it was over, the poplar still stood, branches untouched, roots now soaking in violence. Why did a patch of leaves and wood provoke mass murder, threats, and a military mobilization? The answer: in the DMZ, every object in action means something bigger, a symbol, a signal, a potential cause for war. In the aftermath, the U.S. military was furious. Washington and Seoul demanded a response. President Gerald Ford faced a dilemma: appear weak, risk further violence, or escalate with unpredictable consequences. He chose to send a message, one no one would misunderstand. It would become known as Operation Paul Bunyan, after America's mythical giant lumberjack. But this was not a covert action at night. This would be the most public, over-the-top show of force since the armistice. At dawn, 3 days after the killings, the DMZ transformed into a stage for military theater. 23 American and South Korean trucks rolled in, loaded with 16 men armed, not with just axes, but with chainsaws and sidearms. Behind them waited 2 8-foot-tall soldiers from the South, selected for their sheer size. Everyone wore combat webbing, flak vests, and grim expressions. No routine work today. Helicopters roared overhead, bristling with machine guns and cameras. Armored vehicles took up positions along the border. Fighter jets circled above, on both sides of the border. In the Sea of Japan, the aircraft carrier Midway was placed on alert. B-52 bombers, fully armed, took flight flanked by tactical fighter jets. South Korean special forces fanned out in hidden positions, silent and stone-faced. More than 12,000 U.S. troops were moved to readiness within hours. North Korea readied artillery and anti-aircraft guns in view. All this for a tree, or at least, what the tree represented. The U.S. announced the operation would start at 7 a.m. sharp. The message was unmissable: we are trimming this tree, and we dare you to stop us. The work began. 2 teams moved forward, one with axes, one with chainsaws, and attacked the trunk. Guards fanned out with rifles at the ready. Armed helicopters buzzed low overhead. Across the military line, North Korean troops watched from bunkers, binoculars trembling in tense hands. American engineers cut through the poplar in 42 minutes, dropping the tree in a heap. Not a single shot fired, not a single word exchanged. 100 meters away, North Korean troops stood frozen but did not intervene. Operation Paul Bunyan was over, the tree gone, the message delivered. But how did a poplar become the flashpoint for one of the most dangerous days of the Cold War? Look closer, and you see a chain of strange, revealing mechanisms behind the farce. First, in the DMZ, absurdly small actions can spiral into existential threats. Every fence post, every tool, even every bush is counted and contested. Soldiers record footprints in the mud and nervously compare maps for a stray meter's difference. That poplar blocked a sightline, but that sightline represented control. An inch lost or gained could be used as propaganda or pretext. In this zone, every action is overinterpreted. One wrong move might look like a sneak attack or an attempt to seize territory. When the Americans started sawing, North Korean interpretation wasn't about gardening, it was about power, pride, and presence. The result, deadly force, unleashed in seconds, over something most people would ignore on a country walk. Second, the logic of Cold War signaling meant you couldn't back down, no matter how trivial the trigger. Both Koreas, and the US, saw each move as a test of nerve and reputation. Backing down could encourage bolder provocation next time. Over-responding could cause disaster. Military academies study these moments. Who can show resolve? Who dares to blink? The Americans needed to show dominance, hence the pageantry of muscle, hardware, and myth. Hence the choice to name it for a giant lumberjack able to fell entire forests. The operation's every detail was orchestrated for effect. The chainsaws, the helicopters, the line of fearless giants. War was averted not by logic, but by spectacle. Third, the DMZ, for all its tension, is a place of accidental comedy and surreal ritual. Here, soldiers hold stare-down contests in blue huts with a line of tape dividing north from south. Tourists snap photos of motionless guards and aggressively neutral conference tables. Official interpreters must never smile, lest a grin be seen as an insult or a challenge. Trash is inspected for secret devices. Lawn mowing becomes a potential act of war. Military police measure the distance between pens and pencils. Surveillance cameras are hidden behind fake electrical outlets and plant pots. The poplar affair was the strangest of these non-battles, a moment when absurdity toppled into tragedy. Fourth, for years after the incident, the field where the poplar stood became a symbol of loss, vigilance, and the fine line separating peace from chaos. The soldiers who died are honored with a stone marker, their story folded into the fabric of Cold War memory. The spot where the tree fell is still carefully tended. Grass grows thick, but nothing new is allowed to root there. Today, visitors to the DMZ are driven past the site, shown faded photos of the once mighty tree. Few realize how close the world came to another unimaginable war over an unremarkable plant. The absurdity did not end with Operation Paul Bunyan. Even now, the zone remains theater, its actors always on alert, its audience rarely noticing the stakes. Once, in August 1976, a poplar held the fate of armies, presidents, and millions in its silent shadow. And when the tree fell, it left the world a few inches safer and infinitely more absurd. If you'd never heard about Operation Paul Bunyan, or the war that almost began with a chainsaw, share this memory. Who knows what history is sprouting in plain sight now?